Greetings from the Book Whisper. Every story is a journey into a world of love, passion, deception, and self-discovery. Close your eyes, let the sounds carry you away, and may this story touch your heart. The Price of the Catch. A novel in 5 parts. Setting, Port Kellen, a remote fishing village on the rugged coast of Maine. Chapter 1, The Nets. The air in Port Kellen always tasted of salt, diesel, and secrets. It was a town where men measured their worth in tonnage of lobster and cod, and women measured their lives in the long, gray stretches between the roar of departing boats and the fraught silence of their return. Evelyn Rhodes knew this rhythm by heart. For 15 years, she'd been the wife of Captain Noah Rhodes, owner of the Sea Witch, the most prosperous boat in the small fleet. Her life was a portrait of sturdy, wind-burnished contentment, organizing the annual blessing of the fleet, balancing the books for the business, and keeping a pristine, lonely home on the bluff overlooking the restless harbor. The discontent was a quiet, cold current beneath the ice of her routine. Noah was a good man, but he was married to the sea first. Their conversations were about engine repairs, quota allocations, and the price per pound. The passion of their early years had been lost overboard somewhere in the North Atlantic, along with Noah's laughter. Evelyn felt like a well-maintained piece of harbor equipment, essential, familiar, and utterly taken for granted. The crack in her world appeared not with a thunderclap, but with the soft click of a lighthouse door. Liam Kane was the new keeper of the Port Kellen Light. He'd arrived 6 months ago, a quiet man with a past the town gossiped about but never confirmed, a former naval officer, they said. A tragedy. He kept to himself, maintaining the ancient tower and its frenellins with a reverent precision. Their paths crossed at the marine supply store. Evelyn was buying brass polish for the boat's fittings. Liam was looking for a specific type of weather-resistant sealant. He had intelligent, watchful blue eyes that seemed to see the horizon and everything in between. He held the door for her, their hands brushing. A simple courtesy, but it sent a shock through her system so profound it left her breathless on the damp sidewalk. "You're Captain Rhodes' wife," he stated, his voice a low, pleasant rumble. "Evelyn," she corrected, forcing a smile. "Evelyn," he repeated, as if tasting the word. "The organizer. I saw you at the blessing. You held the whole chaotic thing together with sheer will." No one had ever noticed that before. To the town, she was just Noah's efficient shadow. Liam saw the effort, the architecture beneath the event. It was the first thread pulled. The affair began in the lighthouse. It started with cups of tea after she happened to be walking the coastal path. Then, with conversations that stretched for hours about books, about the cruel beauty of the sea, about the quiet despair of feeling invisible in plain sight. He spoke of losing his wife to a long illness, of the silence in his head that was louder than any storm. She spoke of her loneliness, a vast, cold ocean inside her own home. The first time he kissed her, in the circular room at the top of the tower, with the beacon sweeping its majestic, lonely arc over the darkening water, Evelyn felt something inside her crack open and flood with light. It wasn't just lust, it was recognition. Here was a man who saw the woman, not the captain's wife, who listened, who desired her mind before her body. Their trysts became the secret axis her world spun on. The smell of him of ozone, wool, and coffee replaced the scent of salt and fish in her private imaginings. She was careful, painfully so. Their meetings were sparse, always in daylight, under the guise of charity work for the Lighthouse Preservation Society, a committee she'd hastily founded. She used burner phones bought in the next town over. She felt alive for the first time in years, giddy with the duplicity and the stolen, piercing joy of it. But Port Kellen had eyes everywhere, and the most piercing pair belonged to Sophia Grant, Noah's sharp-tongued, widowed sister who lived in the cottage next door. Sophia, who had always viewed Evelyn as an outsider who'd stolen her brother and his attention. Sophia, whose own bitterness was a well-polished heirloom. "You're spending a lot of time at that old lighthouse, Evelyn," Sophia remarked one morning, her voice sweet as poisoned honey. "Such a lonely place. Must be comforting to have someone new to talk to." Liam Kane seems very dedicated to his work. The warning was clear, a harpoon shot across her bow. Evelyn's carefully constructed world developed its first, hairline fracture. Chapter 2, The Bait. The tension escalated with the arrival of the Caspian Star, a sleek, corporate-owned factory trawler that loomed on the horizon like a metal iceberg. It was owned by a holding company, but the man sent to liaise with the local fleet was James Thorne, arrogant, smooth, in a cashmere coat that looked absurd against the fish-gut-slicked docks. He represented everything the independent fishermen of Port Kellen despised. Noah came home grim-faced. Thorne's offering buyouts, good money, says the quotas are going to get tighter, that the independents are dinosaurs. He's preying on the older guys, the ones in debt. Evelyn saw the worry in her husband's eyes, a rare vulnerability that stirred old protective instincts. Noah's identity was his boat, his independence. Without it, he'd be a ghost. James Thorne, however, didn't just see a fishing fleet, he saw a scenic harbor ripe for development once the pesky fishermen were gone, a marina for yachts, artisan shops, condos with a view. At a tense town meeting, Evelyn watched him. He was a shark, circling, and his eyes kept drifting to her, not with the dismissive glance he gave the other fishermen's wives, but with a calculating, appreciative interest that made her skin crawl. After the meeting, he approached her. "Mrs. Rhodes, your husband is a respected leader here, a man of influence. It would be a tragedy to see him on the wrong side of progress." He handed her his card. "Perhaps you could help him see reason." Over dinner, "I'm at the Mariners' Lodge all week." It was a blatant, insulting play, used the wife to pressure the husband. Evelyn declined coldly, but the interaction left her feeling soiled. She fled to the lighthouse, shaken. Liam listened, his face growing dark. "Thorne's a predator. He's not just after the boats, he's after the soul of this place." He pulled her into his arms, a solid refuge against the encroaching chaos. "Let me help," he murmured into her hair. "I have contacts, from my old life. I can dig into Thorne's company, his holding structures. There's always something dirty." In her gratitude and desperate need for an ally, Evelyn didn't question what contacts meant. She saw it as Liam fighting for her, for their secret world, for Port Kellen. She shared details Noah let slip, who was considering selling, what the bank was saying about loans. It felt like a shared mission, another layer of intimacy that bound them tighter. Meanwhile, Sophia's insinuations grew bolder. She'd accidentally see Evelyn's car parked near the lighthouse path. She'd comment on how tired Evelyn looked, how often she walked for her nerves. The net was closing, but Evelyn, intoxicated by Liam and the thrill of their shared secret, misread the source of the danger. The real crisis hit when Noah's best friend and first mate, Matteo, confided in him after too many rums at the town's only bar, the Salty Dog. "I saw her, Noah, your Evelyn, coming out of the lighthouse keeper's cottage, last Tuesday afternoon." She looked flushed. Noah confronted her that night, his face a mask of stoic pain. "Matteo thinks he saw you at the lighthouse, doing charity work, I suppose?" Evelyn's heart hammered against her ribs. She used the rehearsed lie, her voice steady. "The Preservation Society, Noah, we were cataloging old logbooks. Matteo must have seen me leaving the historical collection in the cottage." She poured scorn into her voice. "Honestly, after a few drinks, that man sees mermaids on the breakwater." Noah wanted to believe her. The alternative was the ruin of his entire world, his marriage, his standing, his focus. He nodded, a weary acceptance. "Just be careful, Evie, people talk." She had dodged the harpoon, but it had grazed the hull. The shock of the near discovery, instead of sobering her, made her reckless. She needed to see Liam, to feel his reassurance. She arranged a meeting the next afternoon, using a code text, "Need to discuss the historical maps, 3 p.m. Chapter 3, The Set. The meeting at the lighthouse was frantic, passionate, laced with panic. He knows, Liam, or he suspects. Sophia is whispering in his ear, and now Matteo. Liam held her, his grip almost too tight. "We need to be smarter, we need leverage." "Leverage? On Thorne," he said, his eyes gleaming with an intensity that was new. "If I can get something concrete, illegal dumping, bribes to inspectors, anything, we can use it, not just to save the fleet, but to secure our own future. Force him out. Once the threat is gone, Noah will be consumed with that fight. He won't have time to suspect." The plan felt dangerous, grand. It made their affair feel like a rebellion, not a betrayal. Evelyn agreed, her head spinning. What she didn't know was that Sophia, armed with a bitter certainty, had taken her suspicions to the one person she thought could handle it, James Thorne. In a private booth at the Sawney Dog, she laid it out. My brother's wife is fucking the lighthouse keeper. She's weak, and she's in his ear. If you want to break Noah Rhodes, break his marriage, humiliate him. A man broken at home can't fight at sea. Thorne, a connoisseur of human weakness, saw a better opportunity. Why break Noah when he could use the wife? He began his own surveillance, and he discovered something fascinating. The reclusive Liam Kane was not who he seemed. A few calls, a few favors called in from his own murky contacts, and he had a dossier. Liam Kane was a former naval intelligence officer, dishonorably discharged not for a tragedy, but for selling classified coastal patrol schedules to a foreign fishing conglomerate. He was a disgraced spy, hiding in plain sight. Thorne didn't confront Liam. He made a proposal, a business proposition. In a secluded cove, he laid it out. I know what you are, Kane, and I know what you're doing with Mrs. Rhodes. Charming. Here's my offer. You keep feeding me information through her who's vulnerable, who's holding out, the fleet's weak points. In return, I don't expose you to the town, or to your lovely Evelyn, and when I own this harbor, you get a generous cash bonus and a clean slate to disappear. Liam, trapped and seeing no exit, agreed. His affair with Evelyn was no longer just a passion or a rebellion, it had become his cover, his intelligence pipeline. The guilt was corrosive, but his instinct for self-preservation was stronger. He began to subtly manipulate his conversations with Evelyn, eliciting the information Thorne wanted and framing it as their shared research. Evelyn, meanwhile, was playing a double game of her own. After Noah's confrontation, a cold, survivalist clarity had cut through her guilt. She started recording her conversations with Liam on her phone, tucked deep in her bag. She needed proof of his love, of his commitment to their plan, something to hold onto if everything collapsed. She also began secretly copying Noah's business files, the real financials, not the optimistic ones he showed the bank. She told herself it was to help Liam's investigation. A part of her knew she was building a raft of secrets to escape a sinking ship. The town was now a tinderbox of crossed loyalties and hidden agendas. Evelyn was lying to Noah and being lied to by Liam. Liam was betraying Evelyn to appease Thorne. Sophia was feeding Thorne information to destroy Evelyn, and Thorne was playing them all against each other to consume the town. The catalyst came from the sea. A fierce, unexpected gale swept in. The Sea Witch was out, hauling traps. A mayday call crackled over the marine radio in every kitchen and bar. Engine failure, taking on water. Noah's voice, steady but edged with a fear Evelyn had never heard. Chapter 4, The Storm. Panic, pure and icy, gripped Port Kellen. Wives and mothers gathered at the harbor master's station, faces pale. Evelyn stood among them, her affair, her lies, suddenly reduced to pathetic, selfish ashes. All that mattered was Noah, her husband, the father of her youth, coming home alive. In the chaos, she saw Liam. He was at the edge of the crowd, his face drawn, looking at her with a complex anguish she couldn't decipher. Was it fear for Noah, or fear that his source of information and his cover might drown? The Coast Guard cutter was dispatched, but the seas were monstrous. Hours ticked by. Evelyn prayed to a god she'd long neglected, making frantic, impossible promises. It was the Caspian Star, the hated factory ship, that reached them first. James Thorne, on the bridge, had ordered it. It was a masterstroke of public relations. The monstrous corporate trawler became an unlikely savior, its powerful engines and stabilized hull allowing it to get a line to the floundering Sea Witch and tow it, battered but afloat, back to port. Noah came home a hero who'd been saved by his enemy. The psychological blow was profound. His independence, his skill, had been rendered irrelevant by brute corporate power. He was broken, sitting at their kitchen table, staring at his scarred hands, saying nothing for hours. Thorne seized the moment. The next day, he called a town meeting at the harbor. With the Sea Witch sitting damaged in the background, he played the magnanimous savior. This community is resilient, but the sea is getting meaner, and the rules are getting tighter. My offer stands a fair buyout, a stake in the new, sustainable future of Port Kellen, a future with safe, modern boats and a thriving waterfront for all. The mood had shifted. Gratitude and fear were powerful motivators. Several fishermen, including a shaken Mateo, nodded along. That night, Evelyn went to the lighthouse for the last time. She was done. The storm had washed her clean of passion, leaving only a desperate need to fix what she could. She would end it with Liam, focus on helping Noah heal, on saving their business, even if their marriage was a hollow shell. She found him packing a small duffel bag. "Liam?" He jumped, guilt flashing across his face. "Evelyn, I heard about Noah. I'm glad he's safe." "What are you doing?" The cold feeling in her stomach intensified. He hesitated, then the lies he'd rehearsed spilled out. "I have to leave. My past, it's caught up with me. It's not safe for me here anymore, or for you, if you're associated with me." But Evelyn was no longer the lonely, gullible woman he'd seduced. She saw the evasion, the panic. She remembered the recordings. On a desperate hunch, she bluffed. Was leaving always the plan, Liam, or just after you got what you needed for James Thorne? The color drained from his face. It was all the confirmation she needed. The betrayal was so complete, so clinical, it felt like being gutted. "You were using me, to get information for him." It wasn't a question. "Evelyn, it wasn't like that at first. He threatened to expose me, to tell you everything." "Get out," she whispered, her voice shaking with a fury so cold it burned. "Get out of my town." As he fled into the night, Evelyn didn't cry. She walked back to her house on the bluff, the recording from that night's conversation a digital grenade in her pocket. She also had the files she'd copied, and a new, terrible understanding. She had two enemies now, James Thorne, who wanted her husband's livelihood, and Liam Kane, who had sold her heart for his own safety, and she had ammunition against both. Chapter 5, The Reckoning. Evelyn didn't go to Noah. She went to Captain Elijah Vance, the oldest, most respected fisherman in Port Kellen, a man who despised Thorne and valued loyalty above all. In his cluttered, tobacco-scented parlor, she played him select parts of the recording, Liam admitting to gathering information, mentioning Thorne's name. She showed him the financial files, contrasting the real struggles with Thorne's predatory offers. "Thorne's using a spy and a compromised woman to break us from the inside," she said, her shame a public offering. "My weakness let him in, but my weakness can also help take him down." Elijah Vance looked at her with hard, old eyes. He saw the strategic mind Noah had never appreciated. "What do you need, Evelyn?" The next town meeting was packed, electric. Thorne stood at the front, smiling, ready to sign his first buyout contracts. Just as he began to speak, Evelyn walked in. Everyone fell silent. The captain's wife, who'd been so quiet, she went straight to the front, ignoring Noah's shocked look. "Mr. Thorne talks about the future," she began, her voice clear and carrying over the hum of the generator, "but he builds it on lies and corruption." She held up a USB drive. "This contains evidence of James Thorne conspiring with a disgraced intelligence officer to illegally obtain private business information from local fishermen to pressure them into selling. The officer, Liam Kane, has fled, but his confession is here." She plugged it into the town hall's ancient sound system. Liam's voice, tinny but unmistakable, filled the room. "Thorne threatened to expose me. He wanted the names, the debt figures. It was just business." The room erupted. Thorne's smile vanished, replaced by furious denial. "This is a fabrication, a desperate lie from a woman who's been cheating on her husband with that very man. It was the wrong move." Noah stood up, his big hands clenched. The public humiliation his sister had orchestrated was now his weapon. "You shut your mouth about my wife," he growled, the collective anger of the room at his back. "You come into our home, try to buy our lives, and use snakes to do your dirty work. Get out of Port Kellen, your deals are dead." Faced with a united, furious town and the threat of a scandal that could reach his corporate overlords, Thorne had no choice. He left, his grand plans in ruins. In the aftermath, the silence at home was a new entity. The truth lay between Evelyn and Noah like a beached whale, too big to move. She gave him the full, unedited recording. She didn't beg for forgiveness. She just laid her crime and her subsequent counterattack at his feet. Noah listened, his face like granite. When it ended, he said, "You saved the fleet. You saved my business. I also destroyed our marriage," she said. He was quiet for a long time. "The marriage, it was adrift long before he came along, Evie. I left you alone on shore for years. He sighed, a sound of profound weariness. I don't know if we can fix this, but I know I don't want you to leave, not yet. It wasn't forgiveness, it was a ceasefire, a chance to rebuild something new from the wreckage, something honest, even if it was smaller and quieter than before. Evelyn walked out to the bluff, the lighthouse beam swept across the water, but the cottage below was dark and empty. The price of her catching moment of passion, a sense of being seen, had been nearly everything, but she had paid it. She had faced the storm, navigated the treacherous currents, and brought the boat home, not to the harbor she left, but to a new, uncertain mooring. And for now, in the cleansing, bitter salt air, that was enough. And just like that, another journey on the Book Whisper comes to an end. We hope it was worth your while. If this story found a place in your thoughts, help us keep the magic alive. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss the next world we explore. Your like is the best signal telling us which tales to tell more of. Thank you for listening. Until the next adventure.